The first time Nora walked into that small cafe on the corner of Oak Ridge and 7th, the rain was pounding so hard it drowned out the noise of the city. Her beige trench coat was soaked at the shoulders, and her carefully curled hair had given in to the drizzle. She wasn't supposed to be there, not in that quiet place that smelled of fresh cinnamon and burnt espresso, but her date had chosen it. And now, as she checked her phone for the 10th time, she realized he wasn't coming. The empty chair across from her stayed mocking in its silence, and her heart felt heavier with each passing minute. If you believe that kindness, timing, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Let's keep stories of genuine hearts alive. By the time Nora accepted her fate and stood to leave, she noticed a small commotion near the counter. A little boy, no older than 7, was standing on his toes trying to reach a cup of hot cocoa. The man beside him, tall, with rough hands and tired eyes, was apologizing to the barista for the spilled drink. "Sorry, ma'am." "He gets excited when there's whipped cream," he said, his voice kind but worn. Nora couldn't help but smile a little. The man noticed and smiled back, though his smile looked like it hadn't been used in a while. She didn't know why she did it, but she stayed for a few seconds longer, watching as the man cleaned up the spill himself instead of leaving it for the staff. He was wearing a faded denim jacket, his hair damp from the rain, and his son tugged at his sleeve, whispering something about sprinkles. There was something quietly grounding about the pair, like they belonged to a simpler world. When the little boy turned and waved at Nora, she found herself waving back. That small moment became the start of something none of them expected. Later that day, as she waited outside for a car that never came, her phone battery dead, her umbrella broken, that same man stepped out of the cafe. "You stranded too?" he asked, half smiling. His name was Eli Harper, and the boy was Mason. He offered to share the bus shelter since his car was in the shop. Nora hesitated. She wasn't used to saying yes to strangers, but there was something honest in his eyes, something that made her feel safe. They talked for half an hour as the rain kept falling. She told him she worked in management, leaving out the truth that she was the CEO of Aurelia Holdings, one of the country's largest investment firms. He told her he worked at a repair garage, juggling 2 shifts to make sure Mason never missed a school lunch. His wife had passed away 3 years ago, cancer, swift and cruel, and he hadn't dated since. Nora didn't mention that her date that night had been set up through a private client's network. A man who ghosted her because she didn't look playful enough. Something about Ellie's grounded honesty pulled her in. He didn't ask questions that probed, he just listened. In the weeks that followed, Nora found herself returning to that same cafe more often. At first, it was coincidence. At least that's what she told herself. But soon it became intentional. Eli would stop by for coffee after his shift, always with Mason. And soon Mason began saving her a seat with a grin and a small chocolate cookie. The 3 of them began talking like old friends. Nora found herself laughing more than she had in years. Eli, unaware of who she truly was, only saw her as a kind woman who loved simple things. He didn't know her chauffeur waited around the corner each time she left, or that the diamond bracelet she wore absent-mindedly cost more than his monthly rent. He just saw Nora, and she loved that. But lies, even the gentle ones, have a way of turning heavy. One afternoon, Mason was showing her his school project about airplanes when Eli got a call from his landlord. Nora tried not to eavesdrop, but the conversation was tense. Rent overdue. The garage cutting hours. Eli's jaw tightened, his voice low as he promised to make it right. When he hung up, he tried to smile it off, but she could see the wear in his expression. That night, back in her penthouse overlooking the city, Nora couldn't shake the thought of him. She had everything, a life most envied, but she felt hollow. Eli had nothing but still found ways to laugh with his son. It stirred something deep inside her. The next morning, she stopped by the garage pretending her car had a problem. Eli laughed when he saw her and said, "Didn't peg you for the kind who drives herself." She just smiled and handed him the keys. While he worked, Mason handed her tools. Giggling as grease smudged across her palm, she felt normal. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like someone living behind glass. When she left, she slipped an envelope under Eli's jacket. Cash enough to cover his rent, but she made sure it looked like a customer's tip. Later that evening, he showed up at her favorite cafe, his jaw tight with anger. "I don't need your charity," he said quietly, placing the envelope on the table. The disappointment in his tone pierced her chest. "Ali, I wasn't trying to insult you," she said softly. "You're trying to help, I get that. But pride's the only thing I've got left," he replied, his eyes wet but unwavering. That was the night she realized how deeply she cared for him. Not because of pity, but because of the fire in his soul, the kind she'd lost long ago. Days turned into weeks. She tried to distance herself, convincing herself it was for the best. But Mason wouldn't let her disappear. He'd show up at her office building with a drawing or a note that said, "Dad says hi, but he's bad at saying it." Each one melted the wall she tried to rebuild. One day Mason got sick, a fever that wouldn't go down. Eli had no insurance, no money for the hospital bills, and Nora knew the system well enough to see the walls closing in. She didn't hesitate. She called her private doctor, arranged everything quietly, and stayed by Mason's bedside all night while Eli held his son's hand. When dawn came, the boy's fever finally broke. Eli looked at her with red, exhausted eyes and whispered, "I don't know what I'd have done without you." Nora smiled through tears. "You don't have to," she said softly. The hospital sent the bill to her company address, of course. Eli found out a week later when a nurse mentioned the CEO who covered it. That evening, he came to her office, confused, hurt, and silent. Seeing him standing there, surrounded by the sterile glow of glass and marble, she felt the truth break the air. "You're her," he said quietly. "The billionaire everyone talks about on the news. The woman who bought out half the city." His voice cracked. "Why didn't you just tell me?" "I wanted you to see me," she whispered. "Not what I have." He looked down, fists clenched. "You made me feel like I could belong in your world, but now I see I never did." When he walked away, it felt like something inside her caved. For days, Nora went back to that cafe alone, staring at the empty seats where they once sat. The laughter, the warmth, it was gone. Her mansion, her money, her empire, they all felt smaller now. But one afternoon, weeks later, she got a call from Mason. His small voice was trembling. "Dad says he's sorry, but he doesn't know how to fix things. Can you come?" She drove straight to the garage. Eli was there, sitting on the steps, grease on his hands, eyes tired. When she stepped out, he didn't speak. She walked to him slowly, knelt beside him, and said, "You once told me pride's all you had left. Maybe it's time we both learn that love doesn't take it away. It makes it worth having." He finally looked at her, eyes glassy. "You really think someone like you could want a man like me?" "I don't want someone like you," she said, voice trembling. "I want you." The silence that followed was thick with everything unsaid. Then Mason ran out from behind the door and hugged them both, laughing. And just like that, the tension melted into something beautiful, fragile, and real. In the months that followed, Nora's life changed in quiet ways. She still ran her company, but she spent more time helping small businesses like Eli's garage. She and Eli never made headlines, and that's exactly how she wanted it. On weekends, they'd sit at that same cafe, Mason between them, laughing over hot cocoa. People who saw them thought they were just another family. And for the first time, that was enough. Love had found them not in wealth or perfection, but in the rain, the laughter, and the courage to see beyond the masks people wear. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Every click helps us spread stories that remind the world kindness still wins. Special request: comment below, do you believe love can happen when you least expect it?